Good morning, friends. And we are in November. How the year has flown. But today we have a slightly different thing than the program some of you may have. Today we have dealing with grief, how the death of a canine has affected me. And this is our friend Patsy would be talking on this. Patsy.
Thank you, Ray. I feel very bad about the fact that, although it wasn't my fault, you've got me today, and you should have had Andrew. I'm going to get this right. I'm determined. Bulkowski talking about poles apart from the Second World War, and I'm afraid some people will have been confused and disappointed. It's not my fault on this occasion. Andrew had to go to a funeral, and so we had to do a swap. Not having a good day. We had to do a swap, and yeah. So if you were here hoping to hear Andrew, I do apologise. I'm also aware that the topic I wanted to talk about today, some I'm afraid some Quakers might think it inappropriate. Um, I gave it a lot of thought before I thought I would do it because I didn't want to give offence to anyone. I mean, I know that not everyone sees other creatures as having the same kind of they cannot connect with them in quite the same way as they do with other humans. I've always been rather the other way around, I'm afraid. I've found it easier to connect with other creatures than I have with humans, which is something I've had to cope with over 80 years. Um, um, I have found to my great distress in the last month that I actually need help. And I'm happy to say I came to my friends to ask for that help. Um, I am finding it extremely difficult to deal with the loss of my animal friend. It will soon be a month, and I do think it can. I'm afraid of being self-indulgent. I mean, I am British. I was born in 1944. I was brought up to think that it was, I was going to say unmanly. It was unsuitable to show distress in public. Grieving was done in very private spaces. And if it was done for animals, I certainly didn't know anyone who did it. Um, it does seem to me that the person I'm sorry, I can't help but call it an animal a person, so forgive me, I am referring to a dog. It seems to me that the person with whom we spend all our time, who lives in the same house as us, often sleeps in the same room, um, accompanies us around the place, that is in every respect well, certainly a companion, and really it's rather more than that. I'm fortunate in that I can still continue in my mind talking to Mia, um, but my life has become very dark, and I'm hoping that if I'm I talk out to even a few other Quakers about how this has affected my life in every way, um, it might help somebody else. I'm hoping that it might help someone else. I'm just going to share with you, this is my only bit, I hope, of self-indulgence. I'm going to show you a picture of Mia, if all goes well. Um, I don't know if that's visually is on there. Um, I I only met Mia 3 years ago. It was following the death of the dog I'd been looking after for many years, who used to belong to my cousin. Um, And I have been really quite shocked at the gap left in my life. And I saw this advertisement on a site, very cruelly, I think, called Pre-Loved. And it was a picture of poor Mia. Um, she was dressed up in a sort of pink coat, which she felt looked as if she felt pretty angry about. And I felt very sympathetic about that. Um, so my friend and I, it was in the pandemic. My friend and I drove up to Derbyshire, which is where Mia was. And Mia was a very angry little dog, aged 10. And she had been displaced in the family by the arrival of another dog who was receiving preferential treatment, and the family had decided to keep the other dog. This was partly because Mia's proper owner, a little girl of 14, had won a scholarship to a boarding school, and it wasn't possible to take Mia with her. And so Mia not getting on with the second dog that had been taken into the home, it was decided that it was Mia that would have to go. So I found Mia living in quite a comfortable sort of outhouse, but a very, very upset and angry dog. And we went out to the car, and she jumped straight in, and she never looked back. And she really did seem to be at home with me and with my friend Jackie, who had driven me up, and with my friend George, who lives downstairs, and with my neighbours across the road, who helped Jackie to take her for walks. At the time, I was having surgery for my hip, so I couldn't walk her, but I was with her all the time. And as soon as she arrived at the house, it was like she recognised that was going to be home, and she raced up the stairs. It's an upstairs flat, and looked around and settled, and that was it. And she followed me everywhere, and we just had a lot of fun together. Her health wasn't good. She had a few things, but actually, I'll be honest about this, she had quite a lot the matter. We were such frequent visitors at the vets that I only had to ring up and they knew at once who it was. And she cost an arm and a leg, actually, at the vets, but worth, to me, it was worth all of it because she was great company, great fun, and I loved her a bit. She became too ill, really. She couldn't eat properly at the end. And so we decided we would have to have her put to sleep. And she had a lovely last day with me. And the vet came out to the house. And as these things go, it wasn't too bad. So, it should be good, shouldn't it? This should be a story with a fairly happy ending. Let me just see if I can get back. I'll try to get back to where I was.
Yep.
Oh, yes, I think that's it. Yeah, stop sharing. Yeah, okay. Um, well, I'm a sensible person. I have lost people before. So I set about, I knew not to clear all the things away, so I didn't. I cleared away some things and left others as sort of token reminders around the house. Um, but I found myself carrying the urn. I'd had her cremated. I found myself carrying the urn from room to room. I couldn't bear to leave the urn in a room that I felt I was leaving her on her own. Um, and I started having the most appalling nightmares. Oh, I'm still having these nightmares, and they are awful. Um, I couldn't really understand this because I haven't stopped praying. I prayed for guidance. I luckily do believe that animals like us move into other spheres, other worlds. I also felt that Mia was still in touch, that she hadn't completely moved on. And that was sometimes comforting. But a lot of the time I felt guilty because I was so upset. I kept crying and I was afraid that I would be pulling her back. I've read stories about where people want to go to the underworld and they can't get there because the grief of the people still on the earth is so great that they can't leave, and or to the overworld, depending on how one's seeing it. I didn't want to do that to Mia. I wanted Mia to be free to go, gambling off into the sunset. That was what I wanted for her. But I couldn't stop. I say couldn't, I should say can't. It's just luckily because we're having this conversation, as you see, I am not going potty right now. It comes and goes, um, as these things do. But it's really, I have worked with people who are suffering depression, and I have got a lot, well, not quite a lot, I have got a lot of the symptoms of depression at the moment. I can't sleep, I don't want to get up, um, I'm too frightened to grieve, I'm too frightened to cry because I'm afraid I won't stop. Um, and when I turn to God for help, I feel like the canoe's empty. I feel like I'm in that canoe of life on my own. I can't see where God is at all right now. I suppose I've still got faith because I am saying things like right now, and I'm talking with you. I'm not talking to a trained counsellor, which I could have done. I'm here, which makes a connection, I think, with the fact that I see this as something to do with my religion. But things aren't working out as I expected. I do try to pray. What's actually happening, though, in my day-to-day life is total chaos. Anybody who's been following the fortunes of the discussion group online this month will have seen it has been chaotic. I mean, this last mistake about having this talk today instead of next week, and Andrew being next week instead, that's not to do with my chaos. That is simply an arrangement that had to be changed. I have done scores of things wrong. It's as if my brain is no longer working properly. I've misspelt things, and I don't laugh, but I have been a perfect speller almost since I was an infant. I am misspelling things. Um, I'm doing every kind of thing wrong that I can think of. So I'm in muddle after muddle. I started to think, has this grief driven me into dementia? Has it speeded up the process? Has my time for dementia come? Which I'm one of the things I'm most terrified of is dementia. I feel I can cope with anything physically, which is pretty stupid because you never know what that's going to be like till you get there. But certainly, what I fear most is the loss of my marbles. So I think, well, is it that? Have I, in the same way that a physical illness can drive you faster downhill, has my grief done that to me? Am I just plain losing the plot for good? Or is this a phase? I've actually caught myself doing something I've read that they do in some other cultures. Forgive me, I can't remember which, but they beat gongs. And I've caught myself doing this, I'm trying to make a repetitive sound because sometimes that seems to help, but it hurts my hand as well. So not a great plan, really. So getting back to my main point about this, really, why isn't my religion helping me here? Why am I not able to make the connections that I've always been able to make in the past? I mean, I'm somebody that suffered alcoholism for so many years and succeeded in recovering with the help of friends 35, 30, nearly 36 years ago. I have had to come through all sorts of things, learn how to overcome every kind of distress and mishap that most people learn to overcome much earlier in life, but I had to learn to overcome them in my 40s and 50s. So I've done that. And the death of my dog has made me just want to lie on the floor and hit the ground. And I'm somebody that has, for many years, been aware of the presence of what I will use the word God, although I know we don't all choose to use it, but a presence. I have been aware of a presence which I found of comfort and to which I sometimes felt I could talk. I always tried to listen, and I can't connect. I just can't connect. It's as if I've closed myself off. And in fact, it is also quite difficult to connect with other human beings. So it's not just God, it's God and people. I don't much enjoy talking to people at present. It's as if we aren't on the same planet. I don't mean they're not sympathetic. People are sympathetic, although it's been a month now, and I think probably most people may be thinking, "Gosh, she's not still on about that, is she?" But maybe it's not that bad. I don't know. But I feel I expected more of how I could connect with life in the future. You see, I'm not afraid of death. I've not been afraid of death for many years. I've thought about it, I've contemplated it, I've wondered what it will be like. It hasn't filled me with dread. So I ought to be feeling fine. And I'm not. And so I thought, well, hang on a sec, I've got another, I had to make a note because, as I say, my brain is blessed about all over the place. Here we go. Yeah. Um, how can how can my religion help me? How can I learn from the grief so that I can maybe, my only hope really, learn something from it that I can help other people? I mean, I do realize that the grief that I'm feeling, I think of what's going on in the rest of the world, and I'm ashamed. I'm sitting in a comfortable room. I'm warm enough. My dog's died, and there are people in the world mourning whole families. I think I've got no right, but things are as they are. So I was thinking if I shared this with some friends, you might be able to make some comments about perhaps about your own experiences of grief, um, maybe things that you had found helpful, and maybe most of all, did do other people also suffer a disconnect with the things they previously like their religion? If you used to find that helpful and supportive, did you in extreme grief find it simply wasn't there for you at all? So I'm sorry I've not talked for longer. It was a difficult thing to know how long it was going to take, so I apologise. Um, but I've reached the point really where I would very much like to hear what other people have got to say. Um, I wouldn't mind if you took over some sharing, Ray. Would that be okay? Thank you.
Right. I have had some experiences of grief as people in my life have disappeared and things like that, and a relevant lady partner who had in the past, and I benefit from a counsellor who I went to see, but I can't remember. I was desperately struggling to remember uh, person she followed, and it's Reese, I think it's something like that. And it was um, the five, what do they call it? The five passages which you go on. You know, Hattie is nodding happily. Maybe she knows a little more than I on this.
Well, I know 4.
Carry on, Hattie. You're doing.
Well,
Can I
you
ask
might
you?
you might have something to add. Yeah, yeah. I think the first one is shock. That's first. And the second one is very much questioning. Why me? Why now? What did I do wrong? All the questions hit you. And the third one is, damn, it has happened. Damn. And and anger and upset and realization, yeah, it's damn well happened. After so many years, it's happened. And then finally you work it out some way and you come to some kind of way of living with it bit by bit. Sorry, my cat's contributing, obviously. She um and I think, I mean, there are various. Ray, you talk, yeah. You had a fifth, maybe.
Yeah, it was the acceptance of this thing has happened, and you have to carry on with life because there is no way that you know that you can either spend the rest of your time in sadness and in saying that this didn't happen really, that I am, but it's taking things as a daily, a weekly type of thing, and knowing that you have loving friends around you who you can contact at any time when you feel that way. Because when I was feeling that way, I had dear friends around me, and you probably know 2 or 3 or even 4 you could go to immediately and say, can I chat with you for a while? And they will be there to hold you up while you are down, while you're, because these things will affect you, but slowly, slowly, slowly you will come above that, rise above it. I'm afraid, not afraid. That is how I maintained. That is how I became the person I am today. I think because you are a kind and loving and care person, and whose emotions, uh, rather like mine, I feel, are just there. They sit upon you, and you have to deal with them. But with loving and caring friends, things will get better.
Patsy, did Mia's death evoke memories of all the other deaths in your life?
Well, both my parents died while I was still using alcohol, and alcohol provided me with a wall. So I have never experienced much in the way of grief of my parents. I had one partner who I felt pretty bad when we split up. Well, very bad, actually. But again, I had this alcohol cushion, and it's a very dangerous cushion because it does make you feel less at the time, or at least in your conscious mind, at least, maybe the grief gets buried and waits to come out for a suitable moment, in which case it's possible that what I'm grieving for now isn't just Mia. It could be my parents. It could be that lost partner who had actually died last year, but we had been split up for many years. But I was still extremely fond of him, and I would say there have been three major losses in my life, none of which I did actually grieve. Not. It wasn't like this. I was sorry. It's not the same thing. It's really not the same thing.
Do you feel tempted to reach for a bottle or not?
No.
No.
No, it's never come back. I can only thank God, really, because when I talk to other people who've still got problems, all I can offer them is that when I was still drinking, I kept trying to stop and stopping and then starting again and stopping. But in the end, I stopped for good, and I knew it was for good. I could. But one of the things I am just wondering now is if perhaps all the grief that I didn't go through might be here now, which would explain, which would be pretty devastating, really, because they weren't good deaths, as you might say. They weren't deaths in which everyone was happy and said goodbye. Of those three people, not one of them was like that. So they're all deaths in which you think, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that, I wish I'd done that, and I didn't. So you can't console yourself. I can't console myself.
But Mia's death was a good death, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Mia's death is the kind of death that you would always like to have, really. Happy, feeling safe, and surrounded by the people you love, which she had. I don't think people often get that. Do you think?
David.
Be nice.
Yeah. Well, first off, Patsy, it's so lovely how you are able to tell the story and describe your experience and your grief. You're so open, and it's such a lovely experience for other people to be able to be with you as you so clearly express your experience. So, number one, don't feel in the least bit bad or remotely that you're wallowing in anything. But I didn't want to give any advice at all. But I've got a few. One observation, one sort of deeper one, and that is, whenever I'm in extreme states of stress, which happens once in a while, not from grief, but I find myself, there was something you said that I resonated with about not connecting with people. I actually find myself like almost right back. I'm at the back of the cinema, and I'm watching the screen and the audience, and I'm not in the audience anymore. And I'm looking, and I feel when I'm talking to people, I don't feel a connection with them because I'm so far back in my feelings and in myself. And the very dangerous. Never go and ask for a medical diagnosis at that point. because you'll be described as having a schizoid attack and being separate from sort of pathologically separated. But what I find is that I'm just withdrawn into myself and I'm witnessing the world. I've stopped being engaged with it, and actually time helps me through that. But I'm sitting with whatever's going on in my own process, as are you, and acknowledging it. By the way, the words Ray was trying for, Kubler-Ross. This is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 Stages of Grieving, and it's easy to look it up. I did, and I've possibly just popped something in the chat, but not for current consumption, but for to look at later, maybe to add to the notes of the video. But it's the human condition. We are. Some mystics explain that we are on this plane, separated from the divine. We're having a material experience, and we're not experiencing our intimate contact with divinity. And the challenge is to get to that point of being in the material. And and part of the reason for separation is to allow us to experience our life in the material fully and intensely, without the, oh yeah, well, it's all infinite, really. I mean, this is all just a game. You're completely in the game, fully immersed in it, experiencing it all its the word is richness and intensity. There you go. Hattie's sharing her companionship there. And I just read yesterday a wonderful article from the chairman of the RSPCA about our relationships with animals. Sorry, it was my phone kicking in. I've put it on messages. I should have put my phone on silent. So, yeah, our relationship with animals is ever so real. And he was told they're just starting to use, funnily enough, artificial intelligence. They've used artificial intelligence to understand the clicking language of whales. And they feel that we're, moving towards some kind of breakthroughs in being able to understand the languages of animals, which I think will be wonderful. And, I'm completely with you on thinking of an animal as a person. I used to have wonderful times with my sisters, Labradors, going walking in the hills with them, and they were my friends. And there was a cavalry officer who unashamedly described his horse as his best friend. Full stop, no question. And I thought, yeah, that's it. So, we're here on the planet and we're in different kinds of bodies, and we have the ability to make relationships on all kinds of levels and to experience them really and really. And it's lovely that you're sharing with us, Patsy, the intensity of both your relationship and your grieving.
It is actually quite helpful that sorry, as I say, my language is all pieces. I can't find the words I usually find more easily. But you were saying about the way that how we exist on a material plane at present in this world. We're on that plane, as our animal friends and so on. The idea of us all being other than just bodies on this planet, but also being spiritual. I suppose I mean spiritual selves. The idea of our being spiritual selves, it takes away the feeling, oh well, people think it's very strange that I can feel this strongly about a dog, because in another life I wouldn't be a human, and that the dog wouldn't be perhaps be a dog, but we could still be friends. So in this life, we can ignore the fact we're different kinds of bodies, we're different kinds of forms, and be friends, and it feels more sort of natural. I think I'm talking rubbish. Sorry. Well, the way you put it helped me to make a bit more sense of things. So thank you for what that meant. Um, yeah. Well, some other people have thought it was time I pulled myself together. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can't help you, Patsy, with your scary feeling of losing contact with your religious focus.
Mm.
But surely that is a great shock.
Yeah. Yes, I get glimpses. I get glimpses of it. I've got a particular place in the house that I sit. On the times when I can't get into meeting, but I attend on Zoom. And also sometimes I pray in that position as well. I sit there because I once found it was really easy to make a connection, or to be aware of the connection, I think I should say. So I tend to go to that place in the house whenever I can. And I can remember what it felt like, but I can't feel it. It is frightening. I got enough faith to think it will come back, but it's a bit like being out to sea and you can't see the shore. You know, I mean, somebody's taught you to swim, which is great, but where's the shore?
The the Reverend Lionel Blue, who was a rabbi, um, had a faith uh, conscience of faith in the sense that he came from a Jewish community, and his grandmother and all these people way back were Jewish, and he was part of that diaspora. And suddenly it wasn't there anymore, which scared him quite a lot. But he said he came to friends in that friend's house in London and was there for quite a time, and till things managed within him to slowly get better in that type of thing. And he went on to rabbinical college and became a rabbi. And it was quite famous. Most people would know Rabbi Lionel Blum in that type of thing, even if it's just for the talks he used to give in the morning, which were sometimes humorous, sometimes thoughtful, and all that type of thing. But he said his faith slowly returned, slowly within the silence of a Quaker meeting. He felt uplifted in that sense. And I would say, just like you, it takes time. It takes tomorrow is not going to be an enormous kind of revelation of you stop being that way and you now become as you were. No, no. Like getting better from a physical injury, it takes time. And emotional injuries take as much time as a physical injury would.
Longer.
There you go. I agree with my friend there.
I think Hattie was wanted to say something, but
Yeah. Okay. My little computer screen said that because they'd said they'd lower my hand in 4 seconds. Anyway, yes. I when I had the loss of my mum, I mean, there was time to adjust to it, for goodness sake. And it affected my work. And when she died, I found it very difficult, but I was very grateful to have some counseling before she died and realized that I had pre-bereavement grief. When I heard those words, I went and looked and found, as you say, Kubler-Ross and other writings to read. And then when Mum actually was in the hospital, and I found out in a funny way, as you did, repetitive movements, absolutely. Clapping, 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 clapping. I couldn't stop myself clapping. And since then, when I had an extremely painful medical procedure, I found myself hitting the front of my chest up here, near my heart, on and on and on. And I think it's actually very useful. I think movement, walking, stretching, whatever kind of dancing or gymnastic type of things you've ever done, I think it's very helpful to connect with your body because your body is still here. I think be nice to yourself. What do you like? Please make sure you are nice to yourself every day because you are here. And if you can hear what we're saying about your sharing of grief, it's a tremendous privilege. Thank you, Patsy.
Oh, thank you. It
Connects with all of our grief, Be creative is another thing. You are creative. That's in you. It's inherent. And another thing I found useful was to say how I was feeling. And just at the moment, I would like to put you in the corner of this room so that I can get on with things. And so I found little tricks like that. I'm not denying you grief, but please, could you just go over there whilst I get on with things here? Sit outside you. And then what do you do with anger? Because there will be anger. And often people tell themselves off, I shouldn't be angry about this. But actually, you are. You are. You're a child inside of you. And when mum goes away from a child, they cry. They're furious. Don't leave me. And it's all in there. It's all part of us. And the worst thing I found with mum was when I discovered the difficulty grieving her was because I had mixed feelings. I did not like that she picked her scabs. It was very part of her, very tiny part, but my God, that annoyed me. Anyway, so I think mixed feelings about the person who's died, for whatever reason their feelings came up, can be hard to cope with and do need just recognizing. So thank you for sharing.
Right.
Yeah, it's been helpful for me. So thank you. I felt this mixture of fear, really. I didn't want you to think I was using you all as a recovery tool, but then immediately after I thought that, I thought, hang on a minute. Really, where else should I turn except to a group of friends to say, this is my distress. Can I share it with you? Do you have any ideas? What else would you do? Aren't I lucky to have the friends I've got? So thank you.
This group is here for you, and I do think that actually talking about feelings is it's a super thing, because we're all human. We all have those feelings. Another time we could address different feelings. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
I am afraid. I think it affected it when I've had two children, and I don't think I was a good mother, although I do think I tried. But I think I was afraid. I think I was governed by fear a great deal of the time. Fear of doing things wrong. Fear of feeling, really. I wonder how much it's a generational thing, because I was born in 1944 and people had been taught to suppress their feelings and get on with the job. And my parents were quite old. They were 40 when I was born. So as I was growing up, they weren't young people, and they were full of the values of the past century, really. And it was one of the things I had to struggle against. In fact, seemed to me to be so hopelessly behind the times. But yeah, sorry. The other thing I've got the matter with me at the moment is I lose my thread really fast. So
Absolutely. Patsy, all these things that you're finding, jot them down and say to yourself, this is a stress reaction. If you read about stress and the effect on people, you'll find all the things you've mentioned so far today are part of it.
Right.
And people understand that, you know?
So I'm sorry. I'm afraid by now I've no idea what I was going to say.
I put you off.
Just shut up.
David.
Yeah, so there's another piece in the sort of spiritual experience, which mystics write about, the dark night of the soul, right, which is it's the experience that comes at some point on your spiritual journey, and it may be catalyzed by anything, of not feeling connected to the divine. And it isn't necessarily something that you can ride out and pat on the head and say, it's going to be better, my faith is going to return, because part of it may be about coming to a realization that the divine isn't separate from me. It's coming to terms, out there, something I've got faith in that I can go to. But it's a more mature realization that the divine is our own inner nature, and starting to connect at a deeper level. So you can't look outside yourself and find the divine, because it is yourself. So that's something to play with. And so, at that point, it's not looking for something to come back. It's an acceptance of what is.
Could I add a little to that?
Yeah, lovely.
It is very well known that people who blame and put causation outside of themselves and look for reasons away from their own contribution to their self-perception. But people who blame and go outside of themselves have much harder time recovering from troubles, because and accepting symptoms, because they say, well, why have I got this heart pain? Why do I feel sick? Why can't I go to sleep? There must be something wrong with me. Maybe I've got a brain tumor with this terrible headache. And when you're speaking, I think you are expressing some realization already that these symptoms are not Alzheimer's, not dementia. They are a very normal reaction to all that's happened and all that it's brought up unconsciously.
Yeah, but it's still, there's a kind of area where it's frightening. You're right. I mean, you're not wrong, but there is still
I still think it.
Yeah. I mean, what if it doesn't come back? What if I stay here? What if I can't remember facts anymore? Yeah, it happens to people. Why shouldn't it happen to me? I have noticed with physical illness that, well, once I got past, I don't know, 70, I would say, any physical illness would tend to have an impact on my thinking as well. Or maybe that's when I started noticing. Maybe it always has done that, but I started noticing that. And I hate muddle, but I mentally I'm living. Well, actually, no, in every way, I'm living in muddle.
Bless you.
Sadly, Patsy, I think that is called age.
Oh no, please.
Thanks, mate.
Anyway, has anybody else any comments to make on this?
Oh, can I just suggest?
Rosie.
Yes, I was thinking of how beautifully and lovingly Patsy described her dog, Mia. I mean, it was so clear from her description that they bonded straight away, and no one is surprised at your depth of grief. I think also sometimes owning a pet gives you that most marvelous experience of unconditional love. Once you've fed them and taken them for a walk and give them a bed to sleep in, they will just adore you all the time you have, and you don't have to be anything other than yourself. There's very little expected of you, a few cuddles now and then and so forth, but it's the most marvelous feeling, that sort of recognition of unconditional love and not having to kind of work for it or in any kind of hard way. And the other thought I had was around Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief was, I think current wisdom suggests that it doesn't follow on, in 5 consecutive steps. Sometimes it goes back and forth between, for example, say anger and acceptance, or shock and anger. And sometimes we get stuck in one part or another. And I think Mary probably touched on it as well, is that idea that sometimes we are afraid to really, really let ourselves go into the deep grief, because of course it brings with it all the other experiences of grief in your life. And you almost need to give yourself permission and a quiet day to be somewhere safe, that you can let that start to bubble up to the surface. But quite often we try and put a slab of marble on it, because we think we have to survive and put a face out to the world and, function as we always did and as is expected of us. But I think quite often we're not very good at being kind to ourselves and letting ourselves experience the full weight of grief. So, but I do want to thank you, Patsy. Thank you so much for opening up and sharing. And I have no doubt that we've all been touched in some way by grief, and completely know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patsy. It's a brave thing to do, I think.
I didn't feel it was brave, but thank you.
Any more, dear friend? Well, I think that gives us the permission to end this session as we are at the moment. Sorry, Hattie, do carry on.
Sorry, may I just contribute another little ideas? As Rosie says, give your permission to yourself to be with your grief. I called it the work of grief. And when a friend died who was living abroad, and I had felt particularly useless during his last days, I definitely allowed myself to allocate sitting time and grief time. I called it the work of grief.
Mm.
And the other thing is make a list of what you like about yourself, because you are you. And, you know, it's quite surprising how many little things you like. And it may fall off the bottom of the page, this list. And okay, forget about the things you don't like, but just have a look at the things you like and remember to put yourself in a position to appreciate those.
Veterans, it has fallen to me to say thank you to Patsy for her brave talk, and hopefully we will see you all next Friday for an interesting talk on Poland, I think.
Sorry, what's the talk?
I just put it away.
Bring
it out. I've got it here.
Okay.
Poles Apart, some incredible journeys in World War II.
Oh.
A chap called Andrew Bronowski.
Brokowski.
Bronowski was the historian.
Okay. We must make sure we get it right next week.
I will practice.
Andrew's a lawyer.
Good. There's a lawyer as well. Oh, thank you, friends.
Thank you.
And have a good afternoon.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, Patsy.
Thank you.
Bye.